In this lesson, we're going to be preparing our Illustrator files. Okay, so you can find how we originally created these graphs in our course, Designing Thought-Provoking Infographics in Illustrator. Now, I'm going to start from this point where we already have these already designed, and then we'll be able to move these files into Cinema 4D and then create our animated graphs from there. Now, there are a couple things you need to have in mind when you start getting prepared to bring over Illustrator paths to Cinema 4D to use as splines. So let's first take a look at our Layers panel. I'm just going to come over there and open that up, and you can see that everything has been basically put into this one layer. Now that's important. If you split everything up onto different layers, you'll need to move everything into one layer to make sure that it's going to go over into Cinema 4D correctly. So you want to have all of your paths on the first layer. So that's already done. Then you want to make sure that all of your text has been created as outlines. So right now this is still editable text that I could use my text tool on if I wanted to, you can see. So what you need to do is come over here, select the piece of text that you want to convert to outlines, right click and choose Create Outlines. And what that's going to allow you to do is use those as splines in Cinema 4D. It's also going to allow me to give you the same look of all my text with all the same spacing, capitalization, everything. And so you don't have to have the same font as me. Once it's converted to outlines, it's basically as if it's been broken down. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is we'll do the same thing to this sentence here, break down a species. So I'll just right click it, choose Create Outlines. But you'll notice that when I click this, it's one big group. Now, I don't want that. I want to have individual access to the words in case I want to reveal those words one by one. So if I select it, I'll just hit Control-Shift-G, and that will break that group. And now you can see that those are broken down all the way down to their individual letters. Now that might be too much control. If you know you want to have individual letter control, obviously this would be the right way, but I really just want it to be broken up by words. So I'll just select all the letters I want to be a group, which is a word, and I'll hit Control-G, and that will group that. Now you see when I select it, it's one word instead of one letter. So I'll just select the word the, hit Control-G, and do it for all the rest of these, and I'm just hitting Control-G. Now if you zoom in really closely like this and you need to pan over, you can just use the space bar to left click and pull that over to the side, and then you have toggled to the hand tool. Okay, great. That's exactly what I wanted. Now let's see what else we have here. Looks like we have individual control of most of these other things. Now some of these are still editable text, so we'll go ahead and create that as outlines. Now this is a group, so this is going to be one big thing. I definitely don't want that. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-G to undo that, or to release that group. And now you can see that I've got more individual control. Now this is one big text box. So I'll just right click, and actually it looks like this is a group, not a big text box. So you can also, instead of hitting Control-Shift-G to ungroup, you can just select it and right click and choose ungroup, and that will then give you access to the individual words. So if you have a group of words, you won't be able to create outlines until you've ungrouped them. So then I'll select a word, right click and choose Create Outlines, and just do that for all those words. Okay, great. So let's take a look at something else we've got here. Here's a sentence. This is going to be one big text box. So you'll see how now I have the Create Outlines. It's not a group. So if I choose that, again, we've got this as one big sentence. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-G to release that. Now, this time, I think I'd rather do this one by lines. So I'll just select that whole line, hit Control-G to group, and now I've got that broken up into a line instead of word by word. So that's helpful whenever you know that later you maybe just want to swing this one down at the same time, reveal that at the same time. We don't need individual word control. So that can save you time later on once you get into Cinema 4D. Now this text is quite a bit going on here, and you can see that it is a group, so I right click and then I'll choose ungroup. And then we still have this all as one big group, so we'll ungroup again. And now we have individual contact with those words. Now I can select a big group of the words, right click, and choose create outline. So even if they've been ungrouped and they're not in one big text box, you can still ungroup or create outlines just by selecting multiple things at once. Okay, so we would definitely want to go in and create outlines for these bits of text. This path is a special thing in that it is a path that you can see just has the line running through the middle of it. It hasn't been changed to an outlined path, which is important for the way that it will come into Cinema 4D later. So you can see this by seeing that the path is right in the middle, that little blue line. And you can also see it by looking over here and seeing that the fill is none and that stroke has a color on it. So that's important. You want to make sure that any thin lines like that look just like that. Now, these have been grouped together, so we can hit Control-Shift-G to ungroup them. And now we have individual access. Now, it may be that they've been grouped multiple times, so you may have to click off and then reselect them to make sure that they ungroup. So you can see now I have that access. And for this one, I'll probably want this bit of text to be swung down in the 3 lines that it's made up of. So I'll right click, choose create outlines, and then I can just ungroup it as the main 3 lines, Control-Shift-G, and then I'll come through here and select. And you want to make sure that if you're doing this, you include everything. So I want to make sure that little apostrophe gets in there. So I can just shift click that to add it to my selection. You want to make sure all your I's are dotted and everything is in there as a group. So I'll hit Control-G to group it, and then to make sure that everything made it into the group, I can just move it really quickly. Nothing was left behind, no dots or anything, so I can hit Control-Z just to put it back in place. And then I would want to group the rest of these lines as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to save this to bring it into Illustrator or into Cinema 4D, but you still will want to go through and make sure that you've turned everything to outlines and ungrouped anything that you want to have individual control over in Cinema 4D. So we'll act like that's already happened. I'll finish it between lessons, and this is what you have to do to make sure that it makes it into Cinema 4D. It's a special way that you have to save it. So we'll go to File and choose Save As. And I'm just here in your project files, and I'll go ahead and save this into your reference files folder. And we'll come in here, and I want to name this to Illustrator Graphs. There we go. And then I'll click Save. And then this is going to pop up. This is the important thing. You have to save this as a version 8, Illustrator 8, for it to be able to grab it and take it into Cinema 4D. No other version will work. So choose Illustrator 8, go to OK, and it will say that it's being converted. You may lose some editing features. That's okay. I would, however, recommend first saving a current version after you've done this, but you'll have both access to both in your project file, so don't worry about that. So we'll go ahead and say OK, and it'll save it for you. Okay, great. So our Illustrator files have been prepared, and now we're ready to import those Illustrator paths to use as splines in Cinema 4D. So stick around and we'll be doing that in the next lesson.